The film begins in 19th century Maryland, with several Baltimore police officers chasing after a woman's screams from an apartment. The police arrive just in time to find a woman sprawled on the floor with her throat slashed open and her daughter's corpse stuffed in the chimney. Detective Emmett Fields is called in to help with the investigation and discovers that the crime is similar to a fictional murder in Edgar Allan Poe's short story The Murders in the Rue Morgue, which is part of a collection of stories. Poe is now a despised member of society and a broke drinker, and his works are no longer widely read. Captain Charles Hamilton, a military veteran who despises Poe and threatens physical violence against him, opposes his plans to marry the stunning young Emily Hamilton, with whom he has fallen in love. Poe learns that someone is using his writings as the setting for a slew of killings when he is taken to see Fields for questioning. Poe accepts Fields' suggestion to offer his assistance in helping the police find the murderer. The two men are called in to look into the death of literary critic Rufus Griswold, who became Poe's nemesis following a dispute that was documented in Baltimore newspapers. Fields spots a red monster mask close to the corpse, and Poe recognizes the horrific act as similar to a scenario from The Pit and The Pendulum. The two conclude that the Mask of the Red Death's masked ball will serve as the setting for the next crime, which will occur at Captain Hamilton's annual masquerade dance. Fields orders numerous Baltimore police officers to attend the masked ball as guests, while they are not supposed to be there. At the height of the festivities, just before midnight, a man riding a horse dressed as a skeleton appears. After shooting the man, Fields discovers that he was an actor hired for the show and gets an anonymous note. Poe then understands that Emily has been abducted, proving that the entire incident was a distraction. In the killer's note, it is said that he will carry out other killings and leave a trail of breadcrumbs leading to Emily's whereabouts. The murderer then issues a death threat to Emily if Poe does not begin penning newspaper articles that detail the horrific fusion of fact and fiction, prompting Poe to comply with the demand in order to save Emily. Poe realizes the next murder will be similar to the Cask of Amontillado as Fields casually remarks that the ship Morris arrived on is called the Fortunato. Along with many police officers, Poe and Fields explore the city's underground system and come across a section of recently bricked up space that might be the location of Emily's detention. The officers bust through the brick and discover what looks to be a lady with blonde hair in the outfit Emily wore the night she was stolen. Yet it turns out that the body belongs to the sailor Morris, who was killed and buried in the niche while wearing a disguise that made him look like Emily. Two pieces of information are discovered on Morris: a pocket watch that was stopped at 12:27 and thereafter placed in his mouth, as well as a tattoo on his back that had some flesh removed. These hints, Poe and Fields reason, will point to Emily's location, and Poe concludes that Emily must be in Baltimore's Holy Cross Church. Everyone rushes to the church, only to discover that it is locked. One policeman, PC John Cantrell, who is trying to break in, fires at the killer, but he leaps to the roof and slices PC Cantrell's throat. Fields is shot and rendered unconscious, and Poe and Fields rush to find the assailant. Poe races the murderer in a horse race, but the murderer prevails. Poe returns to the church on foot and runs into Captain Hamilton, who at last offers a sincere apology for his treatment of Poe. Emily's name is inscribed on a wooden cross that Fields finds at the church, but the grave is vacant. Poe then makes the decision to start a new column in which he tells the killer that he is sick of the game and is prepared to give up his life in exchange for Emily's release. Poe whips up this new piece quickly, the editor likes it, and now Ivan, the typesetter, has to get it printed. People in Baltimore decide to set Poe's house on fire because they believe that his stories are to blame for the violence, even as they continue to revel in the thrill of the killings. When Poe runs out of places to stay, he moves in with Fields. The maid gives Poe the newspaper and a note from the murderer first thing in the morning. Poe surmises that the message was left on the door the previous evening by the murderer. Then, the paper boy came by and laid the newspaper on top of the letter after it stopped raining. Poe concludes that the murderer must have seen his most recent piece before it was made public. Poe approaches the newspaper office and discovers the editor dead, with his hands detached from his arms and his body positioned at his desk as if penning a letter. In front of the editor is a note that reads, "Getting hot." Ivan congratulates him on finding him, and then says that he missed Poe's work so much that he decided to make up a story of his own and then act it out in real life so that Poe would have to write about it. Poe grabs a gun, but Ivan warns him that if he pulls the trigger, Emily would perish. In order to get Ivan to free Emily, Poe hands him the gun and threatens to kill him. Poe is given a bottle of poison, which Ivan instructs him to take so he can continue conversing with his favorite writer as the poison slowly kills him. Once Poe has lost the ability to seek assistance, Ivan informs Poe that he is relocating to Paris in order to exact the same revenge on Jules Verne. Poe discovers that Ivan will be using the alias Reynolds while abroad. Poe becomes aware that Emily is buried under the floor where he is seated when Ivan mentions the telltale heart before leaving. He enters the cellar through the floor and digs Emily out. As the cops arrive, they place Emily in an ambulance. Poe informs Emily that they will be married in paradise before wandering off to a park bench to commit suicide. When he is still seated there, a bearded man approaches and claims to know him as the renowned author Edgar Poe. Poe is happy about it, but because of the poison, all he can say to the man is, "Tell Fields his name is Reynolds," which the latter perceives as nonsense. Poe's last words were incomprehensible. The doctor informs Fields later at the hospital, where he is later declared dead, and that he had stated that Fields' last name was Reynolds. Ivan is shown getting off a train in France and walking into a carriage where Fields is waiting for him with a gun. A gunshot can then be heard as Ivan lunges at Fields.